Welcome to Tripping Over Love, where we talk all about breakdowns, breakups, and breakthroughs. I'm Courtney Corona with Keith Miller. Hey there, I'm Courtney Corona, along with my partner, Keith Miller. We're excited to introduce you to Liz Earnshaw today. She's got an impressive background, so much so that I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm actually going to read it. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified Gottman therapist, and the author of several best-selling books. Her most recent one was Till Stress Do Us Part. She's also known for helping couples talk through stress and emotions, and we'll dig into all of that. She's been featured in Washington Post, New York Times, USA Today, all the things. It was a great conversation. Here it is.
Yeah, so welcome to Tripping Over Love. I'm so excited to talk with you, Liz. Want to just jump right in and talk about, I think perhaps your number one thing that you talk about, and it's something that's very important to me as well in my career as a couples therapist, which is stress. You talk about that in your latest book, Till Stress Do Us Part. I developed a course just to target stress. It's mindfulness-based, it's stress reduction, and I'm really curious to hear your interpretation and why you came to that conclusion as well, and what you see as both the problems of stress and the remedy.
Yeah, so I started to notice that it was a major issue with my couples after it became a major issue for me, sadly. I don't think it was really talked about in grad school very much. I think that there was certainly maybe some identification of how stress can kind of influence the way people behave and feel and all of those things, but not really. And I went to school for couples therapy specifically, and there really wasn't much on how stress would impact relationships. And after my husband and I had our first child, we were arguing a lot, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me because I'm a therapist. We had a really good relationship. I liked my husband. I still like my husband. I think he loved me at the time, all of those things. And, I was thinking, what is going on? And I remember doing research, and the mental load stuff came up, but we kind of worked through that, and we were still having conflict. And I was like, that doesn't answer it all. And I think that oversimplifies what's going on in a lot of relationships. And so as I started seeing my own couples, I think even my own couples kind of evolved. I started seeing, couples in their 30s and 40s who were also having kids and managing multiple careers and all sorts of things. And I started to realize, I think that a lot of what happens between them is that there is stress, whether it's transitional or it's chronic, and they don't know how to manage it, and they get into conflict with each other, just like my husband and I did. And so it's something that I became passionate about helping people with.
Yeah, that rings true for me too. I was married 24 years until recently, actually, and as a marriage therapist, this is the story that I talk about in our show and in other places. Really not easy to admit as a therapist that you're going through the same things that your couples that you're working with are. And I actually think there's what I call a repetitive stress injury for couples therapists that takes a toll on their marriage. And so I wonder if you've experienced that, and how do you separate yourself for your husband's sake?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Not be his marriage therapist.
He's really good. He, I think because of all this talk around stress and relationships, he just calls it out now. So he's pretty good at being like, I think this is one of those days where you're not actually mad at me, but there's something going on at work. Is that the case? And I'm like, no, of course that's not the case. I'm mad at you. And then I take a deep breath and I'm like, no, actually I'm on edge because of whatever happened at work.
Yeah.
And I think, Liz, that's something, Keith is obviously the therapist. I am not. But one of the things that inspired us to do this podcast really inspired me to encourage Keith that we should be doing this, was I've learned so much just by talking about things. So to your point, if as a therapist, you both are learning through your relationships, the average person, it seems to me like it would be even more important to talk through things and understand what's going on, because as we've been doing this podcast and we've started working together very closely, and we have a great relationship, but we get stressed out and take it out on each other a lot too. But to your point, sort of calling out or saying, I think maybe this may not be about me.
Yeah.
Like Keith will say sometimes when we're having an issue, like, just so you know, this is not about you. And that allows me to drop my, what is that? Whatever wall I have up, and I'm like, okay, all right, cool. But that must be a hard thing to get people to really understand and act on.
Yeah, I think that there's a few things that make it difficult. Like one is that often people don't even have a conceptualization of it. So they understand that something feels wrong. But like, just like you said, Keith, just bringing up, hey, maybe this could be something different than what is being experienced right now. That helps you conceptualize that things are different, right? Like you're all of a sudden like, oh, okay, it's not me, it might be something else. And so a lot of people don't even have that in their minds, that it could be stress that's causing their arguments, for example. And the second is that we all have ingrained patterns for how we react to things individually, so within ourselves, but then also patterns interpersonally about how we react to things. And so it's not as simple as just knowing that you want to have a good relationship and just wanting to improve communication. You have to have the concepts kind of in your in your mind, like a map. And then you also have to work on changing patterns, which is challenging.
Yeah, it really adds to, the old, very cliched saying that, marriage is work or relationships are work, but God, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. You really have to do that. And I know also you talk a lot too of just about the way people live these days, right? The couples where both people have jobs that are stressful and they're navigating income, responsibilities, and most of us have to live off of two incomes, and the stress that comes with that. And we've experienced this a lot because I had a very stressful job. Mm-hmm. How do you see that transition into centering yourself when you're outside of that very demanding professional world into, a loving, caring relationship as much as is realistic?
It's really hard. I think that one of the biggest challenges is that let's say that you work outside of the home. A lot of people work from home right now, but I'm just going to use the cliche of, you've been at work all day, you've done something really frustrating, or you think you're about to lose your job, which a lot of people have job insecurity right now. Or somebody was really rude to you or whatever it is. And so you drive 20 minutes home and the traffic's absolutely terrible and you have to stop and get gas and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so you've got all of this stress. You're coming into the house and you've done absolutely nothing at that point to finish that stress cycle. And so it's pretty hard then to just tell yourself, I'm going to go in the house and I'm just going to be pleasant. I think that, of course, if your day wasn't super stressful, you can take a deep breath in the car and go inside and you can just switch it off. But what most people don't understand is that there's a physiological process going on through all of this stress. And so by the time you've gotten home after all of those things, you're in a state of kind of feeling like you're at risk, whether it's because traffic made you feel like you were going to get into an accident, or you feel like you're going to get fired, or you feel like your colleagues all hate you, or whatever it is. And so you walk into the house, and if you feel like you're at risk, you're already on guard to either get in a fight with somebody or on guard to just want to retreat from them. And a lot of people will push back and be like, yeah, but like life has always been stressful. And that's absolutely true. And in fact, there was like, in some ways, way worse stressors in the past. Like your children might die of bubonic plague or something like that. Yeah. But the difference historically was that people naturally completed their stress cycles because they were moving a lot more. And so when you were working, you might more people walked to work, or more people were farming, or more people were coming home and they were actually having to like tinker with something in the garage to fix.
Like physical exertion, right? Actually does something.
A lot more. They were cooking, they were peeling potatoes, they were washing clothes physically. And what's happened, unfortunately, is that we don't do that. And so it's very, very difficult for people to separate work from home, not just because it's coming in with Slack messages all the time, but because they don't do anything to their body to say, hey, it's over. We're getting it out. We're moving. You're not at risk. My muscles can get something done. It's just not happening anymore. So it sits with people.
Yeah, no, that reminds me of a book I heard of recently called The Comfort Crisis.
That sounds interesting.
About how, what a great title, because it just talks about all the conveniences that we think are wonderful, like dishwashers and lawnmowers and sewing machines, like in the way everything's industrialized, we barely have to do anything. Like I couldn't tell you how, to make any of the items that we use. Like the skill level is really gone. Unless you're specialized in it, you don't know how to do it. And at no other time in human history has the success of a marriage, in modern history where there is marriage, depended on the relative happiness of each person in the relationship. Right. It was always based on like a social contract, and we're going to stay together, religious principles. Yep. So we have less of those influences. Would you agree? And so what do we do?
Well, and that's something I talk about in the book. So not only are we experiencing stressors where we're not completing the stress cycle, which is just an issue within itself and was historically being done in the past, we're also facing a crisis of no clear role guidelines. And that is not an argument to say that everybody needs to go back to these very prescriptive, gendered roles that might have made people unhappy. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that in a way, things were much more clear. And so people understood the identity that they felt inside about who they were supposed to be as a partner matched the identity of what they were doing outside. So they grew up thinking, if I'm going to be a wife, what that probably means is I'm going to raise children, I'm going to take care of the house. I might have a job, but the job will probably be secondary to my partner. We know that didn't always work out that way. There were many women that were the breadwinner, the only one that had to work, but that was the identity formation. And then when they went into a marriage, that is kind of usually how it worked out to some capacity. And on the other hand, the man would think, when I grow up, I'm going to get a job and I'm going to be out of the house most of the day, and I'm going to have to be very skilled at managing how much money we make, and that's going to be what makes me a good husband. Well, now a lot of people do not feel internally the same as they express externally. And this is kind of complex, so if I'm losing you, let me know. Externally about who they want to be in a relationship. So all of my couples, I will say 99.9% of them will say, and they do have an intellectualized belief of, I want my partner and I to be equals. I want us both to work. If we're talking about a hetero relationship, the man will say, I love that she works. I'm so appreciative of it. She's a rock star. It's amazing. And, the wife will say, I don't, whatever he wants to do, I'm so proud of him, whatever is fine. But as soon as you find out wife makes more money and man makes less, and there are the majority of couples, wives are making more money at this point, what you learn is that wife actually feels pretty bad about what some of that means for her. I don't want to do this. I feel pissed off that I do it. I actually wish I could be home after school, but because of our lifestyle, I have to keep making more sales. I have to keep going on these business trips. And I'm so mad because I want to be a mom. And I'm talking about parents that I work with, but I also want to work. And so they feel this internal identity kind of crisis, like who am I? And then the male clients will say, I feel shame because I want to be able to let them off the hook more so that they can go do the PTA stuff, but I don't make as much money. And now I feel frustrated about that, but I can't say that out loud because then I'll seem like I'm a bad guy. And so there's a lot of confusion around like, what are our roles? How are they supposed to play out? And when I'm working with couples, we talk about, it makes a lot of sense that you internalized some things like, oh, my mom did this, but now I can't do it because my life looks different. Doesn't mean you have to do that, but like we need to talk out loud about what you want things to actually look like between what you plan for them to look like versus what you're actually feeling. And how can we get you both closer to that so you're not having this kind of like internal tension and like undiscussed stress because you think you're just not supposed to talk about it.
Yeah. I was just talking to a couple today about the old documentary, March of the Penguins. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, yes. I remember that. Yeah.
Right. And so I was just, because it's a young couple, they have a young child. And I remember watching that when it came out. It's old, but it's about these penguins in Antarctica. Yes. And the climate is so extremely challenging and hazardous that, they have this communal system of everyone taking turns being on the outside because it's so cold. Right. And then it's the women, yeah. It's the females that actually have to go on like a 3-month trip every winter, the worst part of the season, the most dangerous time to get food because it's so far away. And I bring that up because like what you said about, and I recommended it to this couple because I'm like, I was sobbing when I remember being that parent, feeling like it's 24/7 constant. It's like, I just felt like the solidarity with the penguins, I think.
Yeah, I need to see it.
Like this is part of our suffering, which is when we do have kids, those of us who make that choice, it's all in.
Mm-hmm.
It's all in. And we don't sometimes appreciate, like, we don't want to blame our kids for why we're struggling, why they're stressed, but it's a huge one.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and I can say, so I don't have kids, but I was having a conversation with a former colleague earlier today, and as she was like debating what she was going to do next in her career, it was all of those questions and all of those things. And her husband was really frustrated because, he didn't have a clear role anymore. And all of that. And I can even relate to that as somebody who does not have kids. But as Keith and I sort of navigate things too, it's everything feels so complex right now that I am craving simplicity in any way I can find it. So yeah, I can imagine once you add kids to it and then you add 2 stressful jobs and all of that, it gets to be a lot. So with that, then I'm curious, what are, we hear meditating, we hear all of the exercise, all of those things, right, about reducing stress. But what are some of the acts or things that you found has really worked for couples to, what is that? Close that circle? Is that the way you describe it?
Yeah. Like finish it off. So it's tough. I always say I'm a realistic couples therapist. I've had experiences of going to couples therapy with my husband where they would just kind of like hand me a sheet of things where I'm like, we are never going to do it.
Exactly. Need a little more than this.
It'd be like 10 things you could do this week to have a better relationship. And it's like, go on a date for at least 2 hours. I'm like, I can't even take a shower.
I was going to say.
Hello. Yeah.
So I think that one thing that I always try to say to couples, and I think this is part of relieving stress, is what you were kind of talking about, Keith, which is you are just all in at whatever stage this is right now, right? So whether it's kids or it's you're going through a major job transition, or I work with a lot of people who are empty nesters and suddenly they're taking care of their aging parents. Like part of this is taking a deep breath and not pushing against what the reality is. And so being able to say, I see that we are in kind of a shit show right now. We have too many things to take care of, or it's too expensive, or our jobs really are hard, or whatever it is. And so part of finishing that stress cycle is often identifying that it exists and that you're in it and you're here, instead of feeling like it's just this chaos and you don't really know what's feeling bad, but you just know you feel bad, right? Like it's like, okay, I see it. I see that I almost got in a car accident, so now I can calm down. Because I didn't get in the car accident. I see that we are going to have another 10 years of taking care of my aging mother, but I see it. I know that's what's adding up the stress. So now I can kind of calm down. So number one, like identify it and work to accept it's your reality instead of saying, maybe I'll feel different next week. The second thing that's really important is recognizing the physiological aspect of this and figuring out, what do I do with my physiology? So if I'm under chronic stress, then my heart's probably always kind of at a baseline beating too fast. My muscles are probably more tense. My brain is being flooded with kind of threatening hormones that are telling me that things aren't good. And so how do I respond to at least one of those areas? I'm probably breathing really shallow. And so throughout the day, I don't say to people, like, take 30 minutes in the morning to breathe. If you can, that would be great. But throughout the day, like every once in a while, maybe every time you see your bracelet or something that is just always on you, check, how am I breathing right now? Am I taking deep breaths? Am I actually getting oxygen in, or have I been holding my mouth closed and not breathing? So I try to give them a realistic approach to remembering to do it. You might not be able to get in exercise every single day. I would suggest that you get in movement somehow, though. And I often explore with people, like, what's natural movement you do? Because some of my clients, they're great at exercising. Like if I say, you just need to go to the gym, they will. They'll go and they'll run, or they'll use their Peloton or whatever. If they're like me, I will never do that, even if it means that I will be unhappy. And so instead, I say to them, like, well, what are some things that sometimes you avoid around your house that are physical exertion? So for me, it might be like weeding my garden. So when I get out of the car now, what I automatically do before I go inside is I look for weeds in my yard and I pick them.
This is what I asked her to do that earlier this summer.
I did, yeah.
She's like,
now,
she was
to be
bouncing
fair,
off the walls, and I was like,
asked
go
for
weed the
something
garden.
to do. I was like, I need to do something, and so I just weeded the garden. Yeah,
It's great.
but it is, and then you're
Natural.
connecting with nature.
Yeah, you're in nature, you're breathing, you're moving, you're kind of going back to what we used to do. Like, you're not really picking any potatoes out of your garden, but like you're moving your body as if you are. And so what I do now when I get out of the car is I scan my yard and I notice if anything needs to be done. And it's not to be a productive person. I'm just like,
right.
Oh my gosh, there's a huge branch that fell. I'm going to haul that back to the woods and throw it in the woods before I go inside. Yeah. And so I suggest, like, find something that you move naturally that's not a massive obligation, but just you're going to move, you're going to carry the laundry basket down the steps, not because you need to do laundry, but because you need to tell your physiology, I'm responding to you. I notice you need to get something out. I'm getting it out.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, and I've been blabbing, I'm sorry, is that I tell people stress is relieved between people. And so we either dysregulate each other or we co-regulate each other. And so working really hard when somebody walks in and you know they've had a long day, to respond to them calmly. You don't have to respond to them even bubbly, but just being able to say, hey, how was your day? Or I'll be right back. I'm just going to go to the bathroom. Like, keeping yourself calm so that the other person feels that is incredibly helpful when there's stress inside of the relationship or outside of the relationship, but impacting it.
Yeah, the way I teach that is that I tell people to speak for your parts, speak for the reaction you're having, speak for the thought you're having, speak for the feeling, instead of speaking from it.
I love that.
So I can say to you, I'm really angry with you because of what you said. Or I can say, I've got this angry part of me, but it's sort of going to ruin the night if it comes out. And I also want to have a nice dinner with you. So you're speaking for, it's almost like we live in DC, so I often have people who work in the government at some level. I was like, it's kind of like diplomacy. It's like, you've got this diplomat actually capacity that our mind has this capacity to remove itself from itself and sort of be the diplomat and speak for those parts. And then it makes such a big difference, because now I can respond to you flexibly, at least a little more flexibly, and not feel like you're just anger and now I have to be either scared or resistant or whatever.
Yes, it's not coming at you anymore. It's just somebody saying, this is what's happening inside of me, which is great.
Yeah. And it takes so much practice. That's why I did it and put it in a course. I actually wrote this course first and thought, well, I don't really, I want to do less work with, trying to lighten my workload with couples. And I was like, people will just take this course and it'll be awesome and everyone will get better and I won't have to do as much hands-on. Turns out it's such hard work, what I'm asking them to do, that nobody took it. Nobody wanted to do it. So I now teach it live, and I'm like, all right, we're going to do this. You're going to practice this even when you don't want to do it. And then you see other couples doing it and it really comes together. You talk about martyrdom. I wanted to ask you about that, about that topic, because as therapists, right, like often we're trying to help some people get more in touch with their feelings and get more expressive of their feelings. Maybe stand up for themselves, hopefully without putting their partner down, but stand up for themselves, find their voice, etc. But you write about martyrdom. Like what's your problem with martyrdom?
It's kind of like a form of defensiveness, right? Like, once you're the martyr, you're such a good guy, nobody can ever say anything about you. And so when I see people doing that, I call them out. No, you're being a martyr, and let's talk about, like, why are you being the martyr? Because, and then I can be gentle with them, and like, that's coming from somewhere. But usually what's underneath that is, I don't actually want to hear what this other person has to say, because then it would mean that maybe I've failed or done something wrong. And people who are martyrs tend to hate failure. Number two, it often is a sign that, like, you've you haven't set good limits, and now you're almost punishing the other person because you haven't set good limits and you're resentful. So I do everything around the house. I always try to, I'm the one who pays for all your vacations. I never tell you no about you getting your nails done. Or on the other end, somebody saying, I never say a thing about how much I do for the kids, and da da da. But it's like, why don't you ever say a thing? Or if it bothers you that the person's getting their nails done,
it's kind of your problem.
Kind of your problem because you said that it's okay. And so I say it with a bit of humor and also warmth. But yeah, it blocks real connection. It actually is an interesting way to put yourself in a one up by putting yourself in a one down. I'm pretending like I'm beneath you, but I'm actually using my martyrdom to be in power here. And I'm better than you, and I'm taking control. And so we don't want people to be one up, and we don't want people to be one down. And so, when we see martyrdom, it's important to pull it back and say your peers, nobody has to be the martyr here.
I'm curious, Liz, when one of the things that Keith and I, well, actually I should give credit to him and I'm learning it, will say is, we were fighting the other day, arguing, and he said, I don't feel safe right now to speak because of how I had reacted on something. And it's, when he says that, that's such a, I'm thinking as you're talking about all of these things, right? And it's to get to a place where you can have conversations like this when you aren't with your therapist. You both have to feel safe in the relationship with each other, what the implications are going to be in after you say something. So how do you help couples create that space, right? Because they're going home and doing homework, whether you assign it or not, but right, they should be evolving in how they're communicating. So I'm curious how that comes in.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the couple, because some couples, they struggle, but they pretty quickly recognize the importance of safety, and like overall they are able to be safe with each other.
Yeah.
I think for those couples, and these are the couples that I think about a lot, because they're usually the ones that are becoming like, quote, unsafe with each other because they're so stressed and agitated that they're just becoming, they just have a short fuse. And as soon as we talk about it and we think about ways to, can you narrate what's happening in your internal world? Like you said, speak for the parts instead of attacking. Can you take a second to pick some weeds before you come in, whatever it is?
Or do some weed. I mean,
just go do some weeding.
You're going to do something with the herb one way or another.
Whatever works for you. Can you go do something? Some of the couples, just implementing that helps to create a safer environment again. There's couples that are very high reactivity couples. And with them, I have to work a lot in the therapy room to help them even identify what flooding is, what it feels like in their own bodies, because those couples that aren't able to take the, tidbit that I've given them and go home and mostly implement it, they need a lot of like experiential work in the therapy room, which is often me being able to say, I'm going to pause you. I just want you to notice what's happening in your body right now. What would it look like if we just took a break or you breathed? Now, how do you feel being able to talk? So helping them to soothe themselves first. And we do a lot of that. And then they practice that at home as well. And then as we're doing that, working on like, what does it look like to talk like a safe person, right? Like it looks like being able to say things like, hey, I'm not feeling good about this conversation right now, and I just need a break, instead of saying, I can never talk to you, I hate talking to you, or whatever it is. It looks like saying to the other person, I'm whoa, so sorry that you're feeling like that. I do want to hear what you have to say, instead of getting defensive and saying, why don't you feel safe with me? That's ridiculous. You need to hear what I have to say. And so we talk a lot about, what do you say instead? How do you say it? What's it look like to take breaks? And then how do you continually repair during arguments?
I wonder if I can just continue the conversation that Courtney, so you can give your thoughts on what's going on with us. But I made that statement. I didn't feel safe to speak further because, and this goes back to what you said, it wasn't really about you. It was sort of in the moment, yes, that's the inflection point. I didn't feel safe from you because of some part of you that was activated. But also what's implicit in that, and I didn't have the words to say it at the time, is that I didn't feel safe with some of the parts of me that were coming up. that were I knew destructive, or sort of a sign that I'm hurting. Something's hurting. Something got stepped on, and I don't even know what it is. So I'm not going to just keep going. At least I've learned it's not beneficial to just plow through it. Like you said, Liz, I've got to be the one that slows down and says, "Whoa, I think something's overheating right now," and it's nobody's fault. But that's kind of what was behind it for me.
Yeah, I think that's such an important piece of it, is it's helping couples, and for anybody who's listening, like working on when do you notice that you're overheating, so that you can, whether it's about the other person or not, right? So that you can just take the step back in any way that you can, whether it's saying one simple phrase like, I just don't feel safe right now, or it's saying, I'm overheating, or, I honestly will even say, I can tell that I'm about to not be nice. Like, I will say that. The problem is that sometimes the other partner won't hear that, and they'll keep pushing, right? And that's really common. I've done that before. My wonderful husband will say, I just need a second. I'm probably not going to say anything great. And I'll be like, well, why do you need a second for something like this? Just talk about it.
Explain yourself.
Right?
I am so guilty of that. Let's just keep talking.
Or even shaming it and being like, well, that's ridiculous. We're just talking about what we're going to do this summer, right? I don't do it as much, but I, of course, have been guilty of it. But luckily, I don't do it as much. But something that I had to really learn is if somebody says that, it's not an invitation to convince them that what they're trying to express to me is wrong. And so many times we do that. We try to say, like, it's not a big deal. You need to figure out how to talk about this. That's not really how you're feeling. And so, when I'm saying to my husband, I'm probably not going to say something really nice, and then he continues the conversation, it's not going to go well. But what he's really good at is being like, okay, we're going to talk, and I'll come up and talk to you in a little bit, right? So a lot of what I work with couples is you have to know inside of yourself. It's not just about what's the other person doing and how are they getting better. It's inside of you. How do I react, number one, when I'm triggered? Am I able to say, I'm not going to do a good job right now, I need to take a break? And number two, when I'm told no, hey, it's not a good time to talk, how do I react? And can I work on saying, I believe you. I believe that you are telling me it's not a good time to talk, and I trust that's true. And I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about mindsight, sort of the kind of unique ability that humans have to map the interior or anticipate what you might be feeling. And I think you call that co-regulation. It's similar. You talk about, or you're trained in with the Gottmans, right? Yes. So in that school of couples therapy, which is one of what I consider like the big three: Imago, Gottmans, and EFT, emotionally focused therapy for couples. And obviously, there's so many more, but just because I wrote a book about that like 10 years ago, it's like at the time those are your big three. Yeah. Those were the big three for me at the time. The Gottmans talk a lot about criticism, obviously the other defensives that come up too. But do you find that it breaks down that some, like, men are more likely to stonewall, which is that kind of going cold or freezing or kind of collapsing in conversation, and women are more likely to be sort of provoking, and that's stereotypical, and I'm not trying to raise a culture war, but there are gender differences, right? What I love about Stephen Stosny is an old school psychologist.
Yeah, I love Stephen Stosny.
Right? My favorite book is How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It.
Yeah.
That's the only book besides your books now that I recommend to couples.
Thank you.
They break it down by gender, and they say it's really unique. Stephen Stosny and Pat Love break it down by gender, like that women are more susceptible to, like, when they're being critical and pushing and not respecting boundaries of this is for heterosexual couples, of their partner. It's often driven by the fear of not being lovable. That's what they're protecting. And men have that same sort of vulnerability, but it's not like what drives us actually crazy. We do want to be loved. But for men, the fear that drives us to do what we do that's critical of our partner is our fear of shame.
Right. I love that.
And then we have to be important and do something valuable to other people. And if we can't, then we shouldn't be, shouldn't be on the face of the earth. So do you think it breaks down? Do you ever work with it sort of by gender?
Yeah, I mean, I think that breaks down pretty clearly with a lot of couples. And of course, have I had couples where it's different than that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I will say is that even if let's say the male's the pursuer, I still find like almost 100% of the time it's based on shame. Even then, whether it's like withdrawing or pursuing, it's very much like, do you think I'm doing good enough? Why aren't you giving me attention for how good I've done or whatever? But I would say that it breaks down pretty clearly around this idea of shame. Am I producing? Am I doing a good job? Do you think I'm successful? Versus the other partner feeling like, do you love me? Do you care about me? Do you have my best interests at heart? And am I like safe in terms of like, can I relax around you? With men, I don't find that to be the case as much as with women. Like women, it's like, I want to know that like sometimes you take care of me. And so yeah, I agree. I think that comes across. And when I'm working with the individuals, I hear that a lot too, where, if I'm working with a female client, she might be talking about her frustration with a male client. And it's like they're distanced, they shut down when I can share with them in the most loving way that I felt really disappointed when they didn't plan anything for our anniversary. And then they'll talk to me and they'll say I'm being difficult. And we'll often talk about, I don't know your partner, but like, what are some different things that might have been happening for them? And, what's common with males is shame. And so that can help. No way.
Yeah. And you can, because you can speak to the shame, like or you speak to the fear, like if I know that what could be driving you, maybe we talk about this and get a little background, get clarity. But if I know that, generally speaking, like you said, Liz, that Courtney wants a signal from me that I'm with her, that I'm not going to leave her, that she's the one for me.
I go from 0 to 100. Yeah.
And I might say I need space. I need to pull back. I need to not be connected to you. But if I can say that in the context of, but I'll be back.
Yes.
And, and it's not because I don't love you. It's because I actually want to get the space to come back and really be there. You deserve that from me.
Yeah. And there's something really freeing about having that safety at its core. And I remember what I was about to say, because having two people who have been trained and educated in this and gone extensively to school and everything, to hear both of you sort of talk about, okay, these are the things that pop up for me too. And all of that is a wonderful reminder that we are all humans and it's not going to be all, roses and puppy dogs and all of that. And there are ups and downs, and being able to feel safe in the stability I've found allows me to then give you what you need, or, and then step back. And then I don't have the stress or worry, because I'm like, okay. And after you've shown me over and over again that you come back, after like steps away.
Half the time apologizing.
Right.
Went
Yeah,
a little
exactly.
too far.
That is actually, that's very helpful too. Because I'm like, I know he's going to apologize by this. I'm going to give him some space and we're going to be talking and it'll be fine. I have one question. I wanted to bring this full circle and circling back on stress. I'm curious, as we talk about work and professional life and all of those things, how much you see, Liz, of what somebody in couples therapy may learn that helps them with work. Because I've found that as I've evolved in our relationship, it also helps me understand how I'm reacting at work, what I'm learning about at work. And that has also helped me manage stress in a better way too. So do you see couples who are really dedicated to this, also how that impacts their external lives, not just their personal lives?
Yes. So when I'm working with couples, and Keith, I'm sure you've had stories like this as well, where we'll be working on something and they'll come in with an aha moment about where else it's happening in their life very, very often. So I can think of a lot of couples that will come in and let's talk about the martyrdom thing. They'll come in and they'll go, I've been talking a lot in here about how resentful I am of my partner. and how I never say no about things. And then I get mad, and it made me realize I think I'm doing that at work too. And I had a conversation with my boss, and I realized my boss wasn't even expecting these things of me. And I feel so much better because I was saying to my boss that like I'm doing too much and I'm not being paid enough and da 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 da. And then my boss said, "Well, I didn't want you to do any of that. You don't need to. I can get somebody else to." So people will take their insights from couples therapy often, and they'll recognize where else it's happening. It could be work, it could be with extended family, whatever. The other thing that I think comes up a lot is that when we're working in couples therapy, especially around stressors, one thing that we do talk about is how the outside world is causing some of the couple's problems. And so the conversation might be, I get that you're in a really difficult legal job. I work with a lot of lawyers, and their jobs cause their marital problems. It's as clear as day for many of them, especially those who work at big law. And so I work with a lot of lawyers, and one of the things that we'll talk about is, well, realistically, what's causing this? And what they come to is, well, I don't get home until 9 p.m. I'm required to keep my phone on me, my work phone at all times. If they need a legal brief sent, I have to send it, even if it's 4 a.m, even if it's noon and we're on vacation on the beach. I have to leave the beach. I have to do all of this stuff. And we have to spend time talking about, like, is this what you actually value? It might be hard for you to admit. You went to all of your schooling for this. You make a ton of money doing it. Your lifestyle is built into it now. But how is your work life actually impacting you? So it's not only that they have insight about how they act with their partner, but often they'll understand the way that the world is kind of ruining their personal lives in a new way, because they've got that feedback from other people. Now they're sitting in a room with their partner, and maybe the therapist who's saying, well, I'm not sure how you think you're going to have a better sex life if you're working 20 hours of the day. Like, that's just not going to happen. So yeah, those are two ways that I think it comes up.
Fun fact about the attorney profession: there are two professions that are tied for the highest correlation to alcohol abuse.
I wouldn't call this a fun fact.
It's not a fun fact at all, but it's interesting. There's an interesting twist that attorneys are the number one profession most likely to abuse alcohol, but they are tied with miners, meaning like people who excavate holes in the ground for a living. All they do is dig, or spend time in a mine. Like, so that just says a lot about how stressful that profession is.
It is kind of like a mine too. They kind of just are staring at the same thing.
Burrowed in to this intellectual, very valuable, obviously, part of society, but very, very removed.
Very stressful.
Very, yeah. Final question before I give you a chance to plug anything you want to mention about your work and your books, is attachment. So I've been on a bit of a rant on social media, in large part because I've seen so many influencers talk about, you got to know your attachment style: insecure, attached, avoidant. And I'm just like, F that. Like, okay, the labels can help, so that's fine. But people come into my office sort of sometimes wrapped around the axle of like, he's this and I'm that. And it's like, no. So what do you think? I know you've written and your work is about attachment. So
yeah, I mean, I like attachment.
What do you think?
I think it's important. It's a part of us being secure.
It's a real thing.
Right?
Yeah.
And it matters very much for children, and it matters very much for adults. I think, and it's interesting what you've noticed, because what I've noticed is the same. And I remember when I first got on social media, it felt a lot more like a place where you could provide the information that maybe you learned in school that might be interesting to someone. And it didn't need to be so snappy. Like, are you an anxious? If you are an anxious, then you're going to struggle with da-da-da. It wasn't that. It might have been something like, here's the different attachment styles and here's how they might play out, and like, pay attention to how that might play out for you, right? Just basic education. And what that's morphed into is marketing theory, really, where it's like, if I say it that way, no one's going to like it because it's not going to trigger them. So now I have to say, you are one of these 4 things, and these are the horrible things that will happen to you if you don't know it. And here's the wonderful things that'll happen to you if you do. And so now I'm marketing theories. And I've actually not been on social media since Memorial Day because I have really not liked what I see. It's been very hard for me to watch other professionals do this. And this is not to say that I've never misstepped or thought I was explaining something as education and it came across as not thought, oh, this post will do really well if I say it this way. I've been sucked into that as well. But I've wanted to step back because, especially with this attachment thing, we're really losing nuance. That attachment is about essentially how safe do I feel in a relationship, in this very relationship, not even all of my relationships. And if I'm feeling activated, maybe that's like an insecure attachment. That makes sense that that's what we would call it. And so maybe some of the things that you're noticing as you're hyper aware, like, what's my partner doing? Do they like me? Why didn't they message me back? But that doesn't mean that like you are that forever. That means that something's going on that's influencing how secure you feel, kind of like Courtney was saying earlier. And so what's more important is, what is creating the sense of insecurity? Is it reality? Like, maybe your partner really doesn't text you back consistently, and that is not comforting to you. Maybe you grew up in a very inconsistent home, and so you can't let that go, and it still is there. But let's talk about, how do we move through that and past that so that you're secure in this relationship? You know, I think that the actually most damaging one is calling people avoidance. That one has become like calling someone a narcissist at this point. It's like, oh, don't be with an avoidant partner. And it's like, oh, what does that mean? I mean, a lot of people withdraw, or they don't know how to talk about their feelings. Yeah. So that's my little spiel. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You did. I think we share a lot in common on that. So, and I will take that to heart too, because, you know, we're kind of just kicking off this channel. And so we have a lot to learn when it comes to what works and what doesn't, and what's really healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's really healthy. So really a pleasure to talk with you, Elizabeth Earnshaw. Your book is Till Stress Do Us Part. That was 2024. Is there anything you want to share with people about where to find you and any of the work that you're doing currently?
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me today. It was so nice to talk to both of you. But if you would like to find out more information, you can go straight to my website, which is ElizabethEarnshaw.com. So it's just my name. Or I have a practice. It's called BetterLifeTherapy.com, and we're based in many states. So we have therapists that can serve a lot of people. And as was mentioned, my book is Till Stress Do Us Part, and it's all about how stress influences how we relate to other people. And you can buy that wherever books are sold.
Thank you so much, Liz. So great to talk to you.
It's so nice to talk to you both.
Thanks for listening to Tripping Over Love. Subscribe now to make sure you get the latest episode, and drop us a comment or a question. See you next time.